Hey guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is why I recommend new coders start out with one medical coding credential. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue, I'm a medical coder. Okay, disclaimer first and foremost. What I say today will probably upset some people, and I'm just waiting for it. I'm waiting for the feedback. But the reason that I am okay with saying and talking about controversial topics like this, why new medical coders should start out with one credential, is because it hurts me to see new medical coders being taken advantage of. A lot of times, either the schools or these online schools, these trade schools, sometimes it is the instructors themselves, they will glamorize having multiple credentials after your name, and they will sell you these additional credentials all day long. Oh yeah, you just have to study for this exam, and then you can have this credential, and then you can have that credential, and you can have this credential and that credential, and you can have a whole bunch of credentials. Having a bunch of credentials after your name is not going to get you more money. It is not going to get you hired faster. That's the first thing right out of the gate. Because a lot of times people think, well, the more credentials I have, the more chances I'll get to be able to get started somewhere. This is absolutely not true. I had the CCA when I very first started, and I managed to get 4 jobs, okay? And I got 3 of those 4 jobs quite quickly, and one right after the other. And each time I got progressively better on the pay scale. And each time I got progressively better with my skill set. So that is something that you need to know. It is not about having multiple credentials. It is about getting experience. It is about studying so that you can get yourself better when it comes to knowing your medical terminology, your anatomy, and your pathophysiology. Now, I'm telling you guys to start out with one medical coding credential because I have seen that, like, these students, I've seen them. Well, I'm in school and I sat for this exam and I already have this credential and I'm going to sit for this next credential. And getting multiple credentials is like getting multiple tattoos. Once you get one, you want to get a bunch of them. Guys, let's not trivialize the industry, okay? And when I hear comments like that, that's trivializing our industry. And I actually saw an instructor agree and encourage this type of behavior. Let's talk about responsible additional credentialing, okay? When you are getting additional credentials, this says that you already have experience. When you have experience and when you want to move on and you want to progress into a more specialty thing, and then you get training, and then you sit for that certification exam, and then you pass it, and you're adding that additional value to your name. That makes sense because you've already had the experience to go along with that credential. If you are less than 2 years and you have a string of credentials after your name, if I'm a hiring manager and I see you and I see another credential holder who has one credential but has been really working hard at learning and everything like that in the same amount of time, less than 2 years, me personally, I'm going to go for the one that has the one credential, because the one with the multiple credentials is not going to impress me, and it's not going to impress a manager that is worth their weight in gold. Why? Because of the simple fact that you're not going to be looking for somebody that's going to be trying to add all of these things to their name when they don't have experience. Well, I'm going to get a billing credential. You don't need to be certified to be a medical biller. If you look in the job postings for medical billers, they don't ask them to be certified. They're asking them to have a high school diploma or a GED, and a lot of times they're asking them to have experience. Sometimes they're asking them to have no experience. I have known many very successful billers who have their own business who are not even certified medical billers. So that is something to know. When you spend time and you start learning these additional skills and things like that, yes, if there's going to be a time when you want to, say, become a CDIP, Clinical Documentation Improvement Practitioner, and you've had years of experience and you're ready to make that next step with making your name a little bit more, okay, I have this specialty, that makes sense. But again, if you're just getting in and you immediately want to jump into being a CDIP, or you immediately want to jump into being an auditor, you need to have time in the field first. And I think that it's horrible that there's brand new people out there that are just racking up all these credentials and really sometimes have no idea what the details of these credentials are. And they're just adding them because they were able to pass an exam. And I don't think that that's right. To me, when you're developing as a brand new medical coder, you need to spend time learning. Then you can properly go on and get yourself to grow. But you don't need to be certified to be a medical coding auditor either. I know many people who have years of experience who end up being auditors. Now, if you're fresh out of the gate and you have less than 2 years of experience and you're trying to be a medical coding auditor, it's wrong, because you need to have time as a medical coder first and to have been audited to know what it's like to sit through a proper audit. Otherwise, you have somebody who has very little experience trying to tell a veteran, well, you did this wrong. And maybe they might be right. Maybe they might be pointing out something that a veteran coder didn't see. But this is not always going to be the case. So if you're looking at becoming a medical coding auditor, you need to have a few skills in your back pocket first. You need to be able to educate people, not just providers, but you have to be able to educate other medical coders and other medical coders from different walks of life, different age groups, because as the medical coding auditor, you're going to be working with everybody. So you're going to be working with people that are older than you. Some people are going to be younger than you. So that is something that you need to really keep in mind. You know, to be a really a good, solid voice in this industry and to be able to do things that are going to get you full satisfaction in the workplace, you have to have done the time. When you're brand new and you're racking up these risk adjustment coder and billing coder and things like that, you can do that with just your certification. You don't have to have all the other specialties on there. Why? Because on the credential exams, whether you're taking the CCS, the CCSP, the CCA, or the CPC, all of them cover some form of reimbursement on those exams. And what does that mean? That means that we know about billing. So again, that is something that you need to think about. It's not all about, oh, I'm going to be this glamorous person with a bunch of credentials after my name. These credentials that are after your name have to make sense, because the more that you tack onto your name, the more continuing education units you're going to have to come up with. That's number one. Number two, if you are certified with both associations, now you're trying to keep track with multiple either memberships, because maybe you're a member of both of them, and with the specialty credentials with AAPC, with some of those, you have to have certain continuing education units that are specific for that particular credential specialty that you have, right? Or specialized credential that you have. So that is something to keep track of. You know, as you progress, and I've talked about this in another video, as you progress and you get more credentials, that is more continuing education units. Now with AAPC, for one credential, it is 36 continuing education units. 36. If you are not yet employed, now that's going to be very expensive if you can't find free ones. And really, no one should have any excuse not to be able to find free ones, because they're everywhere. And they're easy to find once you start doing your research. But a lot of people will get frustrated and they're like, well, I couldn't keep up with it, so I just let it lapse because I couldn't afford it, because I couldn't find any continuing education units or they were too expensive. Guys, that is what we are in. We are in an intellectual field that requires you to do continuing education. And yes, sometimes you're going to have to pay for this, because if you're not working and it's maybe not a benefit of your employment, because sometimes that does happen where the employer says you're on your own when it comes to continuing education units. You have to be able to find out for yourself. Now think about all the money that you're going to spend for something that you didn't even really need when it comes to these additional credentials, right? Especially when you have no experience. Now, when you have experience, yes, by all means, and you want to become more specialized, by all means, go for it. But don't have a bunch of credentials that say the same thing, guys. That's the thing. When I see that, I just shake my head, because it's just like, did anybody tell you? Did you know before you got all those credentials that essentially they're meaning the same thing? So that's the thing, that when you're trying to become more attractive to these employers, it's about how much knowledge do you have, because you can have a bunch of credentials and not really have a whole lot of knowledge, right? And then when it comes push comes to shove, are you going to be able to put your money where your mouth is? Are you going to be able to have those skills to be able to show the employer? And that is something that you need to think about before you start getting yourself into more debt, trying to get all of these other credentials and things like that. I'm just trying to help you guys out. And another thing too that I want to talk about is this channel is about medical coding, the field of medical coding, what it's about. And a lot of the things that I talk about on here are the things that either people are not talking about or there's a lot of misinformation out there about it. That is what this channel is. I got a comment the other day from somebody that literally asked me, do we have to surrender ourselves to become good medical coders? That means we can't have any fun, we can't do anything 24/7. Guys, you are watching a channel about medical coding. And yes, it is called Medical Coding with Bleu because the premise of this channel is to talk about medical coding with me, right? It is not to talk about my own personal life. It is not to talk about other things. It is not to talk about hauls and things like that. No, it is literally to talk about medical coding, my experiences, the books that I use, and things like that. That's what this channel is for. So don't get confused when I talk about, yes, you need to study. You do need to study. That is part of the deal. But no, do I say you need to do 24/7 study and you have to surrender yourself? It's ridiculous. No, you don't have to do that in order to be a successful medical coder. You just have to put the effort in, especially when you don't understand something, and especially in the beginning when you're trying to get hired. I'm just trying to tell you guys things that's going to set you up for success, not so that you can be frustrated. Because I can't tell you how many times I've gotten letters from people, Bleu, my teacher never told me these things, or I never knew, or I heard this other thing, this, that, or another, whatever. And so with that, that's why I put out the information that I put out, because it's important for you guys to get neutral information. And, you know, for people that say, well, Bleu, you share your opinions. Yes, of course, it's my channel. I can share my opinions. But at the same time, I always give you guys the good and the bad. And I give you guys the good and the bad so that you can make your own decision. You can make your own choice, just like making your own choice about these additional credentials. Now, like I said, wait a couple of years. And that is my fervent wish for all of you, is that you wait a couple of years before you start adding on and tacking on additional credentials. Find out if you like medical coding first. Find out if you want to continue on in this field rather than trying to get yourself racked up in a bunch of debt before you even decide if you like it or not. You know, there's a lot of people that are in this industry now that are quite resentful that they're even in this industry because they're only in it for the money. And they got all these additional credentials, but they're not going to let them lapse because they don't want to waste all the money that they spent getting them. And I don't blame them because, you know, you spent all that money to get them. You may as well keep them. But they always tell me the same thing. Bleu, I wish I would have known. I wish somebody would have told me that it wasn't going to make a difference, because it's not. So that's just what I want to say to that point. And like I said, I'm not trying to sell you guys anything. Whether you decide to get into medical coding or not, whether you decide to tack on a bunch of credentials after your name or not, is entirely up to you. I'm just giving you my voice and my opinion and my advice, which is get experience first, because you don't want to be in an auditor's chair. Because trust me, medical coders will ask you, how much experience do you have? And if you say you have less than 2 years of experience, they're not going to take you seriously. And that's just the way that medical coders are. You know, they're going to ask you questions because they're very inquisitive, especially those veteran medical coders. And they're not going to be easy on you, especially if they know you're brand new. And now you have to tell them what they did and did not do right. That's another thing too. So, you know, it's not about, oh, the power of being a medical coding auditor. It is about being an educator, because the accuracy and the information that comes out of that facility is really resting on your hands. And as far as how are you able to educate the people that you are auditing so that they don't continue to make the same mistakes? Are you a person that can be, that can take as much as you can give? because to be an auditor is a huge responsibility. You have to be able to sit there and accept when a veteran coder or a brand new coder is telling you that you're wrong. And that's a problem that a lot of medical coding auditors have. They can't stand it when somebody tells them that they're wrong. Does it feel good when they tell you that, yeah, you're wrong? No, it doesn't feel good at all, especially if you're sitting in the auditor's chair, because you should know better. But sometimes it does happen. You know, we're all human. And this is about looking and making sure that you're understanding those guidelines and making sure that when you are giving this information that you are coming fully armed and you're showing how did you arrive at that particular answer. So that is something that you guys need to know, you know, and I hope that this information comes to you and that you are willing to listen to this with an open heart, because like I said, sometimes when I say things, people just automatically assume and run with it a completely opposite direction than what I have meant to say. This is why I try to be very clear with what I'm trying to tell you guys. You know, take your time, especially when you're trying to add on these additional credentials. Currently, I just have one credential. That is currently. I am working on things in the background. There are things that I'm not bringing to the channel just yet, but I will bring in due time, right? And I did just get my CCSP not too long ago, okay? Because I stubbornly held on to my CCA because I wanted to. So, you know, that is something that you guys should know. But me just having one credential does not make me less of a coder. That's number one. Number two, I've trained doctors, I've trained nurses, I've trained new medical coders, I've trained medical coding auditors. So, and each one of them has learned from me. So that is something that, you know, just because a person has one credential, again, it does not make them less. If you want to have one credential, that's great, because that says that you can concentrate and focus on what you need to. Doesn't mean that you can't acquire all these other skills. I have the skills of an auditor. I have the skills of a CDI. I have the skills of all these other potential functions, but I don't need to add that onto my name, you know? But again, I got stuff working on in the back that I will bring in due time. And it is raining, so that's why you hear the rain and the thunder out there. But I'm gonna go ahead and upload this video so it can be ready for tonight. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I hope you'll hit the subscribe button, like this, share this, and I hope you'll consider supporting me on Patreon. Patreon is a lot like YouTube, but I do more coding exercises there, and I talk about coding, and I do all kinds of fun word puzzles and stuff like that as well for medical terminology. So I will go ahead and wrap this one up. If you are a medical coder, a medical coding student, somebody curious about the fascinating world of medical coding, a provider, or a nurse, I invite you to like and subscribe and follow me on my journey in medical coding. I will see y'all next time. Bye!